Hi everybody, this is Jimmy, and you're reading with Jimmy. Today we're going to analyze the great play written by William Shakespeare that we've been reading together, Macbeth. The title of this analysis is called Understanding Macbeth by Jimmy. Macbeth is a character that gets a notion and just will not let go. Would you agree with that after you read it with me? So when you get something in your head and you can't get it out, that's called obsession. And many people think that Macbeth is a play about ambition. In fact, unchecked ambition is often viewed as the most central and widely accepted explanation of this play. Well, if you read Macbeth, it's all about ambition. Scholars view Macbeth as someone undone by his ambition. And so they conclude that the play serves as a cautionary tale about how destructive ambition can be. But that's not true. And I'm going to prove it to you today. So when we read this play together, as I hope you did, I think we're about to find out that ambition is not at the heart of Macbeth's character. Obsession is. Let me repeat that. He's obsessed. And if we read how other people lead their lives and how we should lead ours, this play is about a person who is obsessed. We should get a very clear picture of the road to ruin that obsession, not ambition, does to the human being. Ambition doesn't explain, for example, Macbeth's silence when he hears the witches speak. You remember that scene? We're going to go over it. When the witches speak to him, he's silent. He's just quiet. He lacks pleasure in anything he does or his escalating violence. This guy's a violent guy. Not that he wasn't violent before the play began. Well, ambitious people are not always blind, but obsession makes people blind. Would you agree with that? I want you to think about that. So, obsession. When you're obsessed, anything goes. Nothing matters except fulfilling your obsession. Do you understand that? Think about that. For example, if you were obsessed with speed, wouldn't pay attention to speed limits, would you? Why would you pay attention to speed limits if you were obsessed with speed? I'm not saying you would last long on the road, but that's what obsession does, doesn't it? It neutralizes morality, judgment, following rules. I'm obsessed. Aristotle, who I talk a lot about, talks about the golden mean, the middle of things, the balance. If you read the meditations on this website from Marcus Aurelius, you'll see that he talks a lot about that, balance. Macbeth is about imbalance. It's about what happens to a person who undergoes obsession, which disrupts the balance. I mean, we all get obsessed every now and then, don't we? I'm obsessed. I've got to clean the house. Shakespeare may have been not just ahead of his time, but really way ahead. I really believe that. Since he showed us what obsession is. He didn't just tell us. Macbeth's obsessed. He showed it to us. And that's the difference between classical literature and why sometimes it comes so close to real life. Let me touch on a few points. I'm throwing out ambition entirely as Macbeth's central flaw. And this is going to make a lot of people tick. Oh, no, you can't do that, Jimmy. I've read so much criticism and critics. Well, I'm doing it. It's my website, right? But it's not, think about this. It's not his central flaw. It's ambition. It's obsession. Once he's obsessed, everything around the person, around Macbeth, must bow to his obsession. And I'm going to point this out, that his obsession begins after he hears the witches' predictions. Do you understand that? You remember when they made that prediction? Right? It goes something like this. If I foretold I would be king, and Banquo's descendants will be kings, right? Will be kings. Then my new obsession is that I will be king and lock my kingship in by killing Banquo. Do you understand that? It's not Duncan. The murder of Duncan, the king, is secondary. Banquo is the real target to a obsessed guy, not an ambitious guy. Besides, we're going to talk about these predictions and how important they are. Because the idea of ruling forever is really Macbeth's obsession. It has nothing to do with ambition, per se, in itself. That's Latin. You like that? Obsession is what drives Macbeth to seeing things. You know, he sees things, Banquo's ghost, right? He's obsessed. It's obsession supported by his realistic wife. She supports his obsession. Once an obsessive idea, once you get that obsessive idea, right and wrong judgments disappear. They evaporate. The actions that Macbeth takes are solely driven by that obsession. I've got to kill Banquo and make myself the ruler forever and ever and ever. Fair is foul, foul is fair. Think about that. Remember the witches? Fair is foul, and foul is fair. Good and bad have been neutralized. Once Macbeth starts to fulfill his obsession, he can't stop, even if he wanted to. He's obsessed. He gets used to killing, which, by the way, he already was, like I'll point out. Because from the beginning, even before we meet him, Macbeth is described as a fierce warrior. You remember that? The way he gutted his enemy? Wasn't that a great passage? And he beheaded him, posting his head on a spike? So from the beginning, most readings of Macbeth begin with the witches, the prophecy, and then they weave into ambition. Well, he heard their prophecy, so he became ambitious. You'll see in this analysis that we learn about characters not only from their own words and actions, but from what other characters say about them. You know, that's how we learn about people in life. You talk to them, they talk to you. You talk about them to other people talk to you about, you know what I'm saying? You see, and then you see him in action. We hear about Macbeth, how he disemboweled an enemy, mounted his head on the battlements, and he's being praised for his violence. Think about that. He gutted the guy and chopped his head off and put it on this battlements. It means Macbeth is already prone to violence. You understand that? If you gut someone and put his head on a spike, you're already a violent person. You have to overcome anything. You're already violent. He doesn't just discover ruthlessness. That's part of his character. He's fighting for the king, of course, when he does that. But when his obsession kicks in, when these witches' predictions come about and he gets obsessed, his character really doesn't change. The obsession simply takes advantage of his characteristics, one of which is violence. So, do you know people who are obsessed? Who are obsessive? Do you? I've met people like that. They just can't get that thing out of their head. Often my wife tells me, Jim, let it go. Let it go. People will not change, even when presented evidence, or when that notion leads them toward evil. In any case, I hope you enjoy the play by Shakespeare when you read it with me, because I had a great time reading it with you. Sometimes, if you read it with me, I got a little carried away in certain passages. But that's okay, because, words like Shakespeare are meant to be read aloud. And that happens from time to time when I read classics like this. If you've been on my website and experienced me reading with you on any of these others, I take it pretty seriously and I have a good time. So my desire today is to help you understand how others lead their lives, how to lead your own with classical literature. That's always what I want to do. But Put all that aside for a moment and let's begin with what I always begin with in understanding any piece of literature: the narrator of the story, the teller of the story. Narration. Drama like this is almost always third-person narration. Plays are almost always third-person narration. In Macbeth, this is certainly the case. We see the characters, we hear them, we watch them act. So this is called third-person anonymous narration, showing us what people say and do. The narrator is not in the story. There is no I, was Macbeth when he saw the witches. Macbeth saw the witches. Sometimes you'll hear an aside where Macbeth talks to the audience and he's in the story. But who's telling us the story? Well, Jimmy, it's Shakespeare. Didn't he write the damn story? Well, he wrote it, but he's not the narrator. The narrator is this anonymous narrator floating around a story, any story. Pick up any story that has a third person and a narrator. But like the third person narrator, what's interesting about difference than a first person narrator is that the third person narrator, you have to believe what you're seeing and hearing, right? You have to, or the story will not make sense. So when you hear a character saying that Macbeth gutted a guy and put his head on a spike, if you didn't believe that, the rest of the story wouldn't make sense. You got it? You got it? So Jimmy always tells you the most important part of any classical piece of literature is the beginning. Don't just skip to the witches. Read the beginning, the first words, the first paragraphs, the first few pages. It sets the tone. So spending time on the beginning often helps us understand what the whole thing is about. Macbeth is no different. So how does Macbeth start? Do you remember? Well, of course, it starts with witches. Witches. Witches? Now, language in classical literature, like I told you, is very important. Words mean things. And when you hear the word witch, okay, witch, it starts with witches. Don't you conjure up in your head all sorts of images of a witch, right? And your image of a witch may not be my image of a witch. So let's define what a witch is. According to Google, who we all go to for definitions, a witch is someone who practices magic or witchcraft. That's interesting. But the meaning varies from malevolent figures, good people, often an old woman with evil powers, malevolent, to a modern nature-based spiritual practitioner, even a charming, enchanting person. Malevolent is not a good person, stemming from the word's root meaning wise, widen, wise, right? Supernatural. Famous witches are in mythology. Circe, Morgan Le Fay, Hecate, who, by the way, is in this play, you remember? Hecate, the Greek goddess, the witch, is in this play. She's with these other three witches. Salem witches, you've heard of them perhaps. And even Harry Potter, there's some witches in Harry Potter. Not that Harry Potter will be on this website. Harry Potter's, sorry to burst your bubble, ladies and gentlemen. Harry Potter is not classical literature. It's very good, nice to read, but it's not classical literature. In Shakespeare's time, it was the former, the people who practiced witchcraft. You remember in that one scene where I think Macbeth was talking about their beards, or it was Banquo? He said, you know, I would think that you're women, except you got these beards. Uh-huh. And there's not one or two, but there's three witches who make their appearance. By the way, they're never named. They're anonymous like our narrator. Isn't that interesting? So, when the witches start the play, witch number one, they're never named. The witch says, "When shall we three meet again? In thunder, lightning, or rain?" And then there's sound effects that were already part of the opening, the thunder and the drums. You remember that? Because this is a play and you got to use your imagination. So witch number one saying, when are we going to meet? Witch two says, when the hurly-burly is done. What's hurly-burly? I defined that for you, right? A lot of commotion. When the battle is lost and won. Lost and won. Lost and won. So, Jimmy defined hurly-burly as commotion, and now we know that there's a battle going on and that they will meet when it's done. We don't know who's involved in the battle. And then which 3 says, that will be ere the set of sun. In other words, before the sun sets, it'll be over and then we can meet. We don't know why yet that they want to meet, especially since they're meeting right now in front of the audience. But we do know that the witch can see into the future, or so it seems. And remember when this play was written, way back when people really believed this stuff, and there are some people who believe in witches today. You understand. So these 3 characters speak in 3 sentences. They set the scene. So who's telling us what these witches say? I mean, we're watching them. They're on a stage. Who's the narrator? Who's telling us what which 1, which 2, which 3 say? It's the third person narrator. That's who's delivering this mysterious, anonymous, godlike, omniscient narrator. And in those 3 quick lines, there's a lot of information, right? There's a battle going on. When it's over, it's going to be won and lost, and then they're going to meet again. Lots of information. And then they speak again, in order. The first witch asking where they should meet, the second saying that they should meet on the heath, and the third, why they're going to meet Macbeth. And therein is the name of the play, right? He's the central character, Macbeth. And now we know why they want to meet. They want to see Macbeth. And that's the first time Macbeth is named inside the play. Do you see the rhythm? Question, answer, question, question, answer, question. And then witch number 1 says she comes gramlooking. I define that word for you as the gray cat. The first witch is familiar spirit. The G.B. Harrison. We used a lot of G.B. Harrison. Let's hear it for G.B. Harrison. He gave us a lot of great notes. That was the guy who wrote the edition I studied in college. I still have it after all these years. So I took some of the notes and shared them with you. And we drew a lot of notes that helps us understand this language, which is the language of Shakespeare. Now, a witch's familiar spirit is a supernatural thing. Often appears as an animal. Remember how Dracula used to change into a bat? Well, he was a vampire, not a witch, right? But they use it's magical. It's a magical assistant. It's a protector. It forms a deep symbiotic bond to help spells. I love that passage. We're not going to review it now in this analysis, but when they were making the eye of toad dipped in honey. You remember that when they're mixing all that concoction? These witches are great. And it must have scared the poop out of the people watching this. You have children? Read these witches passages from Shakespeare. Read them to them out loud. Scare the poop out of them. Which one uses a cat? Which 2 a paddock? According to Harrison, that's a toad. But we never know what which 3 uses because she just says, let's go, on. Soon. So then they chant and then they leave. And the chant is central to the understanding of Macbeth. Fair is foul and foul is fair. Hovered through the fog and filthy air. What does this chant mean? Think about it. Fair is foul and foul is fair. Hover through the fog and filthy air. I'm going to suggest it means everything is upside down, right? As good as bad was bad as good, right? It's foggy and filthy from the battle. This is a confusion. The confusion is hovering. It's like did you read Johnny Bear with me? Johnny Bear is on this website by John Steinbeck. There's an evil mist, an evil fog that creeps into the town of Loma. Every night, this mist, this fog. This is powerful language. and it evokes images in the audience. Remember, literature is described by Ezra Pound as language charged with meaning. People find Shakespeare difficult to read because for some of you, language has lost it's meaning and lost its charge. Fair is foul. Why don't you just say everything's screwed up? Well, why don't you say that? Well, which is better? Hey, Jimmy, everything is screwed up. Hey, Jimmy, fair is foul and foul is fair. Isn't that better? You want to make an impression on somebody, but you better run so you don't get hit. Anyway, it pays dividends when you relearn the language in terms of its meaning. And again, if something's screwed up, you can say fair is foul and foul is fair. And maybe only you know what that means. But it's a beautiful piece of language. That's why we read classics, because the language is charged with meaning. Well, Jimmy, I don't believe that. Fair is foul, foul is fair. It doesn't have any meaning for me. Well, that's okay. That's okay. Go along with your life. That's okay. But I'm telling you now, it has meaning when you use language used precisely has meaning. Ladies and gentlemen, words represent reality. You understand that? We're not going to get into that, otherwise we'll be here all day. The language here shapes the audience's perception of not only what a witch is, but what's going on in the play. Everything is upside down. War is like that, right? Fog of war, you heard that? So when you erase your blackboard and stay inside the story, it's the language that will help you shape your thinking and your understanding. And these witches become important to the story. You know what happens if you read Macbeth with me, right? They give Macbeth some predictions that actually create his obsession. Do you believe in witches? Do you believe in astrology? Do you believe in fate? Do you believe you can see into the future? I don't know. Do you? Some people consult astrology every day. No matter what you believe, I don't really care. You have to suspend your own beliefs and believe the third-person narrator if this story is going to make any sense and help you understand it. Do you understand what that means? Forget about what you don't believe witches. I don't really care. You have to put yourself in this story. And in fact, I'm going to ask you to, implore you to go back and reread it with me when you're done with this analysis, because it will have much more meaning than when we read it together. Not that it was bad when we first read it. Okay? Imagine you are in the audience listening to these witches, and imagine you're in the audience in 1606. Geez, that's a long time ago. No cell phones. There is a new Scottish king in England, lots of poverty, there's a plague, political turmoil, lots of fair is foul going around. You understand that? Well, wait a minute, Jimmy, that sounds a lot like today. What's going on today in the world? Fair is foul, foul is fair. It kind of applies today, doesn't it? You bet it does. You bet it does, doesn't it? Think about what's going on today, right now. And I know you don't know when now is when you're listening to this, but I'm telling you right now, no pun intended, it doesn't matter. It always seems like that sometimes, that fair is foul and foul is fair, doesn't it? So, belief in witches was widespread. King James, who was on the throne, was obsessed with witchcraft, so they say. These are just little tidbits I'm giving you. You don't need to know that in order to relish this story. So stay inside the story with me, or none of it will make sense. And you don't need to know what's going around in England. That's just a little flavor I gave you. Scene 2. One of the things I told you up front when we read Macbeth together is that there's a lot of scenes in here. Quick changes. Shakespeare knew what the hell he was doing. And moving things around very fast. So you got to follow him. In the next scene, we switch to the battlefield and we meet some other characters. Duncan, we meet the king. He's got 2 sons, Malcolm and Donalbain. There's a nobleman called Lennox. And then there's a sergeant who's bleeding. He's been hurt. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, there's lots of blood in this play. Blood, a lot of blood. Blood is a word that's used a lot. This was the Elizabethan drama. Lots of blood. Why did people like a lot of blood? Well, they don't like that now, Jimmy. Really? Have you watched television? As I mentioned, we hear characters speak, and then the sergeant delivers a lot of information about Macbeth. So how do you learn about someone's character, right? Well, you listen to what the person says, you watch what the person does, you listen to what other people say, and then you make a judgment. You don't judge by one thing or two things. You listen, you gather your evidence, right? So you read what the person wrote. If a person is a writer, you may get a letter, right? And don't forget, Lady Macbeth reads Macbeth's letter in a bit, right? Remember that? So we don't have glass heads. We never know what someone's really thinking, but actually that's why classical literature is so important, because it transcends the ways that we have of finding out about people. Dostoevsky said it best, didn't he? Didn't he? He said that the writers often write about people that we rarely meet in real life, but that doesn't make them less real. It makes them more real than real life. And you met Macbeth in the play. Have you ever met anybody like this? Did you ever meet an obsessed person? Well, Jimmy, I think I did, but he didn't go around killing people. Well, how do you know? I'm just saying. In this scene, Duncan says the sergeant can report on the revolt going on, and the battle is explained. The sergeant saved Malcolm, Duncan's son, from captivity. MacDonald is the leader of the rebel forces against Duncan, the King of Scotland, with an ally, the King of Norway. So there's kings battling kings, and the sergeant describes how Macbeth, quote, with his brandished steel out of his sheath, which smoked with bloody execution, like valor's minion, carved out his passage. He cut through everyone to reach MacDonald and split him open from the stomach up to the... Now we know the guy he gutted, and then his head is mounted on the castle walls as a warning to everybody else. I want you to pause for a moment with me and look at this language. Valor's minion. What is valor? Great courage in the face of danger. He was brave. He's really brave. He has valor. Minion means a follower. So the sergeant is saying that Macbeth is a follower of great courage. Like valor's minion. Great courage's minion. Great courage's follower. That's Macbeth. He's fearless. Fearless. So the sergeant is saying that Macbeth is a follower of great courage, and the narrator describes Macbeth as a fierce, savage warrior. Got it? Smoked with bloody execution. The hell is that? Well, this is an image of hot blood clouding the air is suggested, but only if you define these words. Put yourself into the story with me, ladies and gentlemen. How can a sword smoke? It's cold steel. It can't smoke, but the blood from the people being slashed in the cold air on the steel can. Do you understand that? Think about that image. Did you ever see Braveheart? Hot blood, cold air. Do you see what I mean? Language charged with meaning. It pays to read these words slowly, carefully. Roll them around your mind. Go back and reread them again and again. I could read that passage. With his brandished steel, which smoked with bloody execution, like valor's minion carved out his passage. Well, he was brave and cut through a lot of people. Which is better? Come on. These words leave images in the imaginations of people and to us. So it makes me want to go back and reread it again, which I just did. What does this show you about Macbeth? Is he just brave? No. He's a savage. He's fearless. You don't mess around with this guy. Because no sooner did he do this than another counterattack is launched, which didn't deter Macbeth and Banquo. And now we meet Banquo, his buddy, Macbeth's buddy. And then the sergeant says he can't talk. I can't talk anymore. He's wounded. Brave, use your imagination. You don't need to see Braveheart, but if you never saw it, you should see it. Mel Gibson did a great production. And then a guy named Ross shows up, who's another nobleman, who talks about how the Thane of Cawdor was a traitor. This guy was a traitor. And now the battle's escalated to include Norway and Scotland. They're ganging up on Scotland. So we hear how Norway asked for peace terms and had to pay $10,000 to be allowed to bury their dead. A lot of things going on in these sentences. Just boom, 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 lots of information. Duncan says the execution of the Thane of Cawdor. He says, we're going to kill this guy. He's a traitor. I'm going to give his title to Macbeth for his service. So the sergeant tells Duncan what a great job Macbeth did. Thane of Cawdor's a traitor. Okay, kill the Thane of Cawdor and give his title to Macbeth. Wow. Very short period of time. That's why you got to pay attention. By the way, you got to pay attention not only to this, but things that people say in life, because you can miss a lot if you're not paying attention. So we learn through narration about Macbeth's exploits, his ability to fight, and we learn that Banquo is a tough guy too. Got it? But we haven't met him yet. We don't know what he looks like. We're conjuring up in our minds. What does this guy look like? He's a beast. In the third scene, we switch back to the witches. So witches, people, witches. Now thunder, not lightning, start the scene. Boom. So it begins with the witches' banter. Okay, what is that? Just small talk. It's small talk. Distraction. One tells the other that she saw a woman eating chestnuts. And when she asked the woman for some, the woman told her to get lost, and she wants to take revenge on the woman's husband now, who's on a ship. And one of the witches says she'll help her by giving her wind. So remember, this is small talk, but for the people watching this shows you that these witches are not human, right? They're supernatural. Why is the story here? You always ask yourself, why is the narrator telling me this, right? Well, it seems like a break, but it's not. He's establishing the witches as witches. These are supernatural beings, powerful. If you're going to go and get the husband on a ship someplace, the other witch is going to help her by giving her wind. You're controlling the wind, right? Wow. She describes how she will torment that husband. Why? Because the woman wouldn't give her any chestnuts. Oh boy, so the next time a woman asks you for something, give me some of your chestnuts, you better do it. Suddenly her story is interrupted with a drum and Macbeth shows up. Aha! So the audience knows now these are witches. There's no question. And, well, I don't believe it. Well, you have to believe it. It's the third person narrator. Otherwise, the story won't make sense. We got that? Okay, good. So now the main character comes in, and that is who the witches actually wanted to meet. Remember that? They're going to meet Macbeth, and here he is. And we're about to hear Macbeth speak for the first time. Ladies and gentlemen, it's always good to understand what a person says in a play, a story, whatever, for the first time. And we're going to learn a little bit more about this guy's character. So the witches turn around in a circle 9 times. Wow. So imagine they're turning and turning in a circle, and they're turning. And Macbeth and Banquo show up, and the first words out of Macbeth's mouth, ready? First words. So foul and fair a day I have not seen. Holy moly. Do you see this beauty? Do you see this? Macbeth says, I haven't seen a day so foul and fair. What did the witches chant to? Foul is fair and fair is foul, right? This is not a coincidence that the same words are used. Well, who's narrating this, Jimmy? The third person narrator. Well, who's writing this? Well, Shakespeare. Well, do you think that he meant that? Right? That he intended that? Of course he did. But Macbeth is talking to Banquo. But Banquo is the guy who notices the witches first. Withered and so wild in their attire. They don't look like inhabitants of the earth. So Banquo, look at those three. What are they? You should be women, and yet your beards forbid me to interpret your song. They look like women, but they got beards. So then Macbeth steps up and orders them, and we hear him talk for the first time, issuing a command. So we heard him talk, and now he's commanding, speak if you can. What are you? Notice, not who are you? Like Alice in Wonderland with the Cheshire. Who are you? The Cheshire Cat asks Alice. Or the caterpillar, I forgot. Which is on this website, by the way. Alice in Wonderland, that is. Speak if you can. And the three witches speak at one time. One at a time, pardon me. First witch, remember they speak in order? Hail Macbeth, Thane of Glamis. That's his title. He's the Thane, like the Duke, of Glamis. Second witch says, Hail Macbeth, Thane of Corrodes. Huh? Third witch says, Hail Macbeth, thou shalt be king hereafter. So that's my title. This second one called me Thane of Corrodes, Duke of Corrodes. And then the third one says you're going to be king hereafter. Macbeth is already the Thane of Corrodes, but then they call him the Thane of Corrodes. What is this all about? Are these fortune tellers? It is important to notice how Macbeth reacts to the predictions. You understand what I'm saying? When you get a piece of information, it's important to know how you react to it. Do you watch yourself react to it? You know, in poker, they call that a tell. When a person gets a good hand, that's a piece of information, right? A bad hand. And there are tells. How does Macbeth react to this prediction? Okay? Well, we don't know, but you can see it, but we're reading the play, we're not watching. So we listen to Banquo, who tells us, in case you missed it, if you're watching the play, how Macbeth is reacting. Macbeth does not speak. So why do you think he doesn't speak? He ordered them to say, what are you? Right? They didn't answer his question. They gave him predictions. Macbeth is speechless, so Banquo says, Good sir, why do you jump and seem to fear things that do sound so fair? Think about this. This guy is a savage warrior. So Banquo says, why do you jump and seem afraid of things that sound so fair? These things sound pretty good. What are you afraid of? Right? He is the fierce warrior. He's unafraid, and now he's afraid of things like this? That he's being called the Thane of Corrodes and a king? Banquo continues. In the name of truth, are ye fantastical? Or that indeed which outwardly ye show? So he's talking to the witches. Are you just supernatural? What? My noble partner. He's talking to the, partner. That's Macbeth. And remember, Macbeth is speechless in all this, while Banquo's doing all the talking. You greet with present grace and great prediction, of noble having and of royal hope, that he seems rapt withal. But to me you speak not. What about me? So Banquo challenges the witches. What are you doing to my partner? He's speechless. So he says, if you can look into the seeds of time. Oh, what a great line. Can you look into the seeds of time and say which grain will grow and which will not? Ladies and gentlemen, the beauty of that language. Speak to me then, says Banquo, who neither beg nor fear your favors nor your hate. Banquo seems to be more fearless than Macbeth. Or what's happening here, ladies and gentlemen? Take this apart with me. Macbeth is speechless. He's speechless. He actually jumped in fear. Really? Do you remember this is a fearless guy and he's ripping apart people? Banquo says this is pretty good news. What about me? It's like, you go to a fortune teller. What about me? He says. He asks the witches, can they look? And so they do, which they do. Quote, lesser than Macbeth and greater. Not so happy, yet much happier. Thou shalt get kings, though thou be none. So all hail Macbeth and Banquo. There's your predictions for Banquo, right? You're not as important as Macbeth, but yet you're greater. You're not so happy, but you're much happier. And then you're going to get kings, though you won't be a king. And there you have it. Not all of that's it. Not all our predictions, they're kind of observations too. The audience and ourselves already know that Duncan, we already know this. You remember in the last scene, Duncan made Macbeth Thane of Cawdor. We already know that. Macbeth doesn't know that. Did the witches know that? Well, they're witches. Of course they knew that. Even though Macbeth doesn't know, it already happened. So Macbeth speaks again finally. He finally talks. Stay, you imperfect speakers, and tell me more. He knows that he's the Thane of Glen. I want to know more. But how is this possible? How Thane of Cawdor? Cawdor's a prosperous gentleman. Stands within respect. No more than the... Come on, he's a lot. What are you talking about? This is called dramatic irony. Because we already know that Thane's a traitor. Duncan ordered him killed. And he's given the title to Macbeth. Look at all we know from just these few sentences. You see how rich? When Jimmy says, this is language charged with meaning, the only way you get meaning is by taking your time and reading it and understanding it and rolling it around your mind. Dramatic irony is a common technique, right? It's very effective. You've seen it in movies. Because we now know that the witches know about Cawdor too. They predicted it. Macbeth is, stymied by everything. And he says, stay and tell me more, you imperfect speakers. You're imperfect. You're imperfect. You're liars. You're imperfect. Right? Macbeth doesn't believe any of it. Or does he? Unfortunately, the witches vanish. Banquo and Macbeth discuss the situation. I'm going to pause here for a second, okay? So, I think he believes it, but I don't know. I don't know. So Banquo and Macbeth discuss the situation, questioning if they really saw these things. Are we crazy? Or did they eat the insane root that takes the reason prisoner? A drug. Were they drugged? So Macbeth talks again. Your children will be kings, he tells Banquo. Notice he talks about Banquo's predictions, not his own predictions. This is how his obsession starts. You understand this? You're looking at the root of obsession. That's why it's very important to understand what people say and listen to what they say. How they say it. Remember, they really don't know any of this has already come true. He heard he would be king, but Banquo's offsprings will be kings, and his obsession starts. Banquo says, but you're going to be the king. Macbeth says, and the Thane of Cawdor too. Maybe I don't know. So here comes Ross and Angus, some noblemen, and their discussion is interrupted, and they tell them that the king heard what they've been doing. And they're here to bring them to Duncan. And on behalf of Duncan, he tells Macbeth, you are the Thane of Cawdor. Whoa. Banquo asks if the devil speaks true, recalling the witches. Macbeth objects and says, wait a minute. Corrodes lives. Why are you dressing me in borrowed robes? What a beautiful line. Angus explains the situation, right? He says, wait a minute. No. He's a traitor. The next line is an aside by Macbeth. Glamis and Thane of Corrodes? The greatest is behind, yet to come. An aside is in the play, right? That's basically where I told you he talks to the audience. They're very important to understand his character because he's not saying it to anybody but to us. It's like he's thinking, we're looking in his head. Obsession grows by recognition of what the witches said is coming true. Banquo speaks and notes. Banquo says, and oftentimes, listen carefully, to win us to our harm, the instruments of darkness tell us truths. They win us with honest trifles to betray in deepest consequence. So he's saying, well, these could be the instrument of darkness, these witches. Macbeth does another aside. Wait a minute, two truths are told? As happy prologues to the swelling act of the imperial theme. These are preludes to becoming the king. So Macbeth is the Thane of Glamis. He's just been told he's the Thane of Corrodes. So Macbeth has already judged what the witches say to be true. Do you understand that? They told me the truth. Okay? It just happened. His aside continues mulling over what the witches said. Cannot be ill, cannot be good. Fair is foul, foul is good. If ill, if it's bad, why has it given me earnest of success? Commencing in truth, I am the Thane of Corrodes. So if it's bad, why am I the Thane of Corrodes? And if it's good, why do I yield? Why do I give in to such a suggestion of a horrid image that unfix my hair and make my seated heart knock at my ribs? Did your heart ever excessively beat? Knock at my ribs. My heart is knocking at my ribs, pounding on his ribs. Right? If what? If it's true that he's going to be the king. Against the use of nature, present fears are less than horrible imaginings. Isn't that the truth? My thought, whose murder yet is but murder is but fantastical, shakes my single state of man. That function is smothered. Who's he saying all this to? To us, to the audience. Nothing is but what is not. Fair is foul, foul is fair. Right? You got it? You getting it? Examine this carefully. Fair is foul, and if fair is foul, foul is fair. It's in here. Nothing is what is not, right? Thinking this through, we can actually hear. We hear obsession taking hold of this guy. We can hear it. Cannot be ill, cannot be good. The prophecy cannot simply be bad. Macbeth is already in the witch's world. Moral categories are unstable. Good is bad, bad is good. He's falling apart. He's obsessed. Right? Why hath it given me earnest success? I am the Thane of Corrodes. If it's bad, blah, 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 blah. If good, right? We're reading that equals what if it is good? Then I'm immediately tempted by a horrifying idea. What is that horrifying idea? Murder. He's going to help the prediction along. He's obsessed. I got to help it along. Right? Macbeth is not calmly ambitious. He is invaded by an image. Present fears. This is obsessive escalation. Read this again slowly but surely. His obsession is escalating. His imagination outruns reality and becomes more important, more real. I gotta. My thought, whose murder is but fantastical. Right now, murder is the only thought. I can't get it out of my head. It's already in my head. I got to kill this guy. See? Do you understand? Shakes so my single state of man. This thought is shaking me so hard I can't function normally. I can't. I'm falling apart. Holy shit. I gotta. See? I'm drowning in speculation. Nothing is but what is not. Reality disappears. Obsession in one sentence. Now, he's talking to the audience all this time. Banquo's looking at him, right, in front of these other two guys, and he goes, new horrors come upon him. In other words, they've been watching him debate, and then they leave to see Duncan. Do you understand? New horrors come upon him. He's been thinking. Hamlet has the same problem, thinks too much, right? Understanding Macbeth's character is central. So what is this guy's motivation? What convinced him to do what he's going to do, murder Duncan? Banquo, everyone else. He kills a lot of people, right? You think ambition did that? Do you think ambition does that? No. Obsession does that. Obsession is what changed this guy. And when they meet Duncan, Macbeth finds out that he made his son the next king. Right? For in my way it lies, stars, hide your fires, let not light my black and deep desires. The eye wink at the hand, wink, wink. Yet let that be which the eye fears when it is done to see. So in other words, oh no, Duncan's going to make his son the heir. So that means how can my prediction, how can my obsession be fulfilled? And in the next scene, so it happens, we meet Lady Macbeth, who's reading Macbeth's letter. Remember I told you, you find out about people? This I thought good to deliver thee, my dearest partner of greatness, that thou mightst not lose the dues of rejoicing by being ignorant of what greatness is promised thee. So I'm sending you this so that you're not caught off guard about the greatness coming. All right, lay it to my heart and farewell. Glamorous thou art, and card art thou shalt be. What thou art promised, yet I fear thy nature, it is too full of milk and human kindness. This is Lady Macbeth saying, I don't know, Macbeth, your nature is too full of milk and human kindness. What? What? This is the guy who just, gutted McDonald, right? Put his head on a spike. Now he's planning on murdering Duncan. I don't know. Read this again. Art not without ambition, but without the illness should attend it. What wouldst thou highly? What wouldst thou holy? Wouldst thou not play false? She says something interesting. She says Macbeth's nature is too full of milk and human kindness. To catch the nearest way, murder. That would be great, not with, that he would be great, not with ambition, but with the illness that should attend it. What illness is that? What illness is that? It's obsession. She thinks Macbeth doesn't have it in him to do murder, that she will pour my spirits in thine ear and will chastise with the valor of her tongue. She's going to help it along. She's going to feed his obsession. And before Macbeth ever appears again on stage, the third-person narrator gives us his mind in writing in that letter. So the letter Lady Macbeth reads is a report of events. Macbeth is putting the prophecy in place, giving credibility to his obsession. Lay it to thy heart, he writes. Not to test it, not to question it. Internalize it. This is going to happen. This is language of fixation, not ambition. The crown is already assumed. Fate is accepted. What troubles Macbeth is not whether the prediction will come true, but how it will be carried. Right? How it will come true. And he's not totally obsessed with himself, not just becoming king, but he has to erase Banquo and any possibility of succession. Lady Macbeth sees this immediately when she hears all this stuff. She calls it ambition, but everything she describes points to a man already seized by an idea. That's what she says. Already hearing an inner voice that says, "Thus thou must do." The inner voice of obsession. Yet restrained by habit, hesitation, and fear of the gesture required. Remember, Macbeth is a man of action and he's fierce. He's simply justifying now what he must do to secure the throne forever. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a moral struggle. It's not a moral struggle. It's a hesitation to action in the face of compulsion and obsession. Because once it kicks in, off he'll go. You know that's what happens. This is why Duncan's murder is not the center of the play, but the first step. Macbeth acts killing Duncan, and his obsession doesn't end. It intensifies. You understand that? Kingship brings no relief, because relief was never and is never the goal. Obsession feeds itself continually. I'm obsessed. Words are important. If somebody says you're obsessed, you better think about it and see if you really are. Because if you are, you can't think about anything else. And no matter what steps Macbeth takes, there's always another step and another and another. And the true obsession emerges on Banquo, not becoming king. That's what he's got to do. Banquo's the target, not Duncan. Duncan is just a sideshow. It's a step. We see this from the beginning. Ambition, besides, would be satisfied by success. There is no success. None, because he's obsessed. First, with the brutal way Macbeth finishes his enemies. In the letter, he reveals a mind already obsessed. Macbeth is a tragedy about a man who, once seized by an idea, can't let it go. Can't stop himself. Can't stop him, even if he wanted to. This is why Lady Macbeth's language of illness matters. She doesn't say to Macbeth lacks desire or vision. She says he lacks that illness that will give him the ability to do what he needs to do. That should attend his ambition. It's not really ambition. That's sickness. What is that sickness? Obsession. I hope I made my case. We're not done. Plot and Aristotle. You know I love Aristotle, right? Let me take a sip of coffee. Okay. According to Aristotle, there's 3 elements. Plot, character, 6 elements. Diction, thought, spectacle. Plot is the most important. It's the representation of human action. And there's a lot of action in this Macbeth, isn't there? Plot in this story, however, becomes secondary because of Macbeth's struggle of obsession. Character becomes the most important element of this play. Would you agree with that? I mean, there's a lot of action, a lot of plot, but what is the plot? What is the plot? Guy gets some predictions, believes the predictions, executes, gets obsessed, and lets his obsession take him to the final act. So what is this character? Character was the second most important. Aristotle argued character should be believable. Did you believe Macbeth? I did. I did. Did you believe his wife? Yeah, I've seen that before too. You've seen it too, haven't you? These people are real people. Maybe not to the extent of what Macbeth took it, but there's such things as obsession. Okay? Do you feel that in the play? Look how often Macbeth struggles with himself. Look how Lady Macbeth encourages him to murder, and how easily murder becomes under his obsession. We're watching a man lose his soul. Do you not understand that? Aristotle, and you see this, you take the wrong step and you start falling. Sometimes you get into a logic loop. People believe the best tragedies had a balance between good and evil characters. You understand? Macbeth doesn't really have that balance. He's not balanced. Good characters seem to be oblivious to what is going on until, in the end, when we see the final undoing of Macbeth through the witch's prediction coming true. Do you remember that? So he believed that characters should have a morality to them, a moral structure. Macbeth shows us the unraveling of morality. Fair is foul, foul is fair. Pardon me, everything is permitted. Right? It's important to note Aristotle also believed virtue existed on a spectrum. That's the golden mean. We talked about that. Right? Balance. Strengths could become weaknesses if taken too far and vice versa. Fair is foul, foul is fair. In Macbeth, what is Macbeth's strength? Well, his fierceness. He's fierce. He's fearless. Not always fearless. The witch's predictions threw him off, but not Banquo, in doing good for the king. His fierceness for, good gets flipped to fierceness for evil. Fair is foul, foul is fair, right? But it's not evil in his mind, is it? Okay. Whew. Final thoughts. Ready? I hope I proved my obsession case, right? If not, email me, jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. Make a comment on the website in one of the chapters. I'll be happy to answer it to you. From the beginning, before we ever meet Macbeth, the anonymous third-person narrator shows us exactly who this guy is. He's not hesitant. He's not passive. Or he's not incapable of violence. He's a violent guy, a warrior, defeats the enemy, guts him, beheads him. Sanctioned violence, praised by the state, carried out in the name of good. And at this point, Macbeth's conscience is in balance. He kills with moral framework. He kills for the good. Good is good, evil is evil. The witches do not introduce violence into his world. They just introduce moral neutralization. Isn't that a nice word? Fair is foul and foul is fair, which means good becomes bad and bad becomes good. Collapsing rules. There's no more rules. Definitions of what is good and what is evil fall apart. And once those predictions are spoken, once he hears that, right, the word no longer by itself, there's no right or wrong, but everything is permitted. Dostoevsky's thought, everything is permitted. Power is the ultimate decision maker. I have the power to kill you. And that's what Macbeth gets obsessed with, his ability to wield power. And remember, Macbeth does not respond with excitement or disbelief when he hears what the witches say. He falls silent. That silence matters. It's not shock, it's recognition. He's recognizing something inside himself, which turns into obsession. The predictions are not outside the realm of possibility, he starts to believe. So this awakens something in him and says, oh yeah, maybe that's possible. The question is how far his power can extend, will extend, right? Power becomes the only remaining value, not power as a rule. So he's obsessed with power, but power for the sake of power. I can do this. The ability to decide life and death, right? That's power. Lady Macbeth sees this clearly. She misnames it when she says it's ambition, but she already notes he's too full of milk and human kindness. I don't know. She recognizes in his remaining attachment to structure, the habits that tell him that violence where it belongs. The illness, she believes, should attend ambition is not cruelty. The sickness that allows a man to initiate an act that collapses the order that he once observed. What is that sickness that allows a man to initiate an act that collapses the order, to violate the order, to violate the rule? What is that sickness? It's obsession, right? She removes the last restraint. And once that happens, conscience vanishes. Everything is permitted. So that's why Duncan's murder is not the center of the play. The real obsession is with Banquo. Banquo is not a rival for power in the present. He's a threat to the future. So Banquo's sons become kings, while Macbeth's power is only temporary then. And I've got to, I can't, obsession, I can't tolerate that. I've got to kill Banquo, which he does, right? He has them killed. He hires the murderers. Fleance escapes is devastating, not because it wakens Macbeth politically, but because it exposes he's limited. Crap, I didn't finish the job. I still have obsession. So at this point, power no longer serves the goal. It becomes the goal. Power for power's sake. Killing is the ultimate expression of that power. Right? You understand that? To take a life. Oh. The power to erase futures, silence resistance, impose finality. Macbeth is no longer fighting for the king to be the king. He's killing the king. He's killing himself. He's no longer securing order. He is the order. His narrations reveal the struggle in him to do that. Oh, yeah. Because he comes from rules. He followed rules, and then he ditched the rules when the witches created this obsession in him. He's just obsessed. I can't get rid of it. His last speech before he dies is the tell. May I read it to you? I will not yield, give up, to kiss the ground before young Malcolm's feet, and to be ballied with the rabble's curse, though Branham wood be come to Dunsane. Remember, that was the witch's prediction when that wood moves forward, right? You can't be killed of a woman born. Yet I will try the last. I will try the last. Before my body I throw my warlike shield. Lay on, Macduff. Macduff was born from Caesarean, remember that? And damned be him that first cries, hold enough, and they exit fighting. He's not giving up. I'm gonna fight that. I don't give a crap what the witches said. I don't care. Arr. He's just an angry man. Violent man. Violent. And he puts that violence out. Sheesh. That's not ambition. That's obsession. He's obsessed. And he's going to fight to the last breath. So is there any doubt in your mind what has driven Macbeth? This entire play? Is there any doubt? Macbeth's tragedy is not ambition run amok. It's obsession with the self as power for its own sake. Exercise to erase uncertainty. Wouldn't that be great for all of us to erase uncertainty? Not knowing, but knowing the future. Unfortunately, he didn't see what the end game was with his obsession. Right? How did he know, for example, if he just let it go, that he wouldn't have become the king anyway? Why did he have to play the power card, right, and kill the king? Why did he do that? Didn't he want to wait? He became the Thane of Cawdor without doing a thing. So why didn't he wait? Why didn't he wait? That's the question you got to ask yourself. And when you ask yourself that question, it will lead you directly to obsession, not ambition. Ambition is different. It's a subset of obsession, I think. It's not, obsession is unbelievably powerful. Oh God, I'm obsessed with sometimes reading with Jimmy. So, you know what I'm saying? One moral distinction, everything is permitted. Once he's obsessed, once he says, I could do this, I've got the power to do this, I'm going to kill the king and everything else. Even when those last three predictions come through, right? That the woods, you can't be defeated by any man born of woman. And you won't have to worry about anything until the woods come to Duserain, to your castle. You know the story when you read it with me. So he doesn't stop because there's nothing left that can stop him, only himself. There was a great myth about, I forgot the guy's name, but we read a lot of mythology on this website, about a guy who he did something really good, and the God says, we'll give you whatever you want. And he says, really? And they said, absolutely. He says, I want an insatiable appetite. Really? That's what I want. I love to eat, and I never want to be satisfied. Okay, if that's what you want, boom, he got it. So he had this insatiable appetite. He was so happy for a while. He ate and ate and ate and ate, right? He was, oh my God, I was obsessed with eating, and now I'm eating. And then suddenly he realized, I'm never satisfied. I'm never satisfied. Oh my God, what am I going to do? So he goes to the gods, and they say, well, you asked for it. Sorry, Charlie. Oh my God, what am I going to do? So he ends up eating himself. Ladies and gentlemen, that's obsession. That's obsession. You're never satisfied. Oh my God. And that's sad. That's sad, isn't it? When you can't be satisfied or take pleasure in looking at the sunsets, things like that, because you're never satisfied. Shakespeare shows us, without modern psychology or moral commentary, what obsession is. What happens when someone seeks absolute power for the sake of power and discovers too late that power eventually eats itself. Thanks for reading with Jimmy. This is Jimmy. I enjoyed talking to you about Macbeth. Hope you enjoyed the play with me. Please go back and reread it now, not as a man of ambition, but a man obsessed. And ladies and gentlemen, there's a clue here. Don't be obsessed. Take a deep breath. Relax. Everything will be fine. Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. Read all the classics on my website. I'm glad you're here. Send me an email. Drop me a comment. I hope you stay tuned. Thanks a lot and have a great day.